Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Welcome back, everyone. I just want to begin by asking if there's any newcomers. I asked this before, but if there's anyone in our Zoom world, would you please unmute and introduce yourselves? All righty. If there's no one new, then we'll go around in the room and we'll introduce ourselves, then we'll hear from our speaker. My name is Mark.
Jeff. My name is Cass.
Matthew.
I'm Mike.
Jack.
Baruch.
David.
Don. Hugh.
George. Stephen.
Brad.
JD.
Very good. And I'd like to also to welcome everyone today who is joining us today via Zoom. We've got Jason, Bob, Charles, Chris, Clint, Daniel, Francis, and I think that's everyone. And if I missed you, welcome. We are really thrilled to have back with us today J.D. Doyle, who has spoken and has been with us for many occasions. I'll do a quick introduction, then turn it over to J.D. J.D. serves as a guiding teacher at Insight Santa Cruz, and previously for 5 years as the core teacher at the East Bay Meditation Center, and has served as a board member and was the co-founder of the LGBTQI meditation group. JD completed the Spirit Rock Meditation Center Teacher Trainer Program and was in the Dedicated Practitioners Program and the Community Dharma Leader Program. JD has practiced Buddhism since 1995 in the U.S., Thailand, and Burma. For over 25 years, they worked as a public school teacher focusing on issues of equity and access. JD holds a bachelor's degree in environmental studies from Cornell University and has a master's degree in language and literacy and sociocultural studies from the University of New Mexico. JD identifies as gender non-conforming. They are committed to celebrating the diversity of our human sangha, addressing the impact of racism on our communities, expanding concepts of gender, and living in ways that honor the sacredness of the earth. Welcome, JD.
All right. Well, I really enjoy teaching for the Gay Buddhist Fellowship community, and I really want to honor the longevity of your community and the commitment that you have to practice, and also the commitment to elevate and honor gay Buddhists, because it's so often overlooked. And even though we can now buy like countless rainbow things and pride merchandise that we never used to be able to buy, and I too will say I have done that, it really is something about this true freedom that we are engaged in here in this practice that is beyond the colors that we can now buy in our favorite mug. All right, I did go to Target and get one. Cheers, queers! You know, how fun was that? And we know that that's only going to get us so far. So I really, really appreciate everything that the Gay Buddhist Fellowship does. And yet, you know, having grown up, I just turned 60 this year, so having grown up and not having been recognized for so long, and so I wanted to start off because this, to me, is something really important. And I know it can be kind of performative, but it also is a way that I really have been trying to let things touch my heart and not just pass them off. So I wanted to share today I want to talk about rituals, and I want to share a ritual that has happened in our country, which to me is really important given so many of the other things that are happening. And so on May 31st, in advance of June, there's a proclamation on lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex Pride Month. And this was offered by the Office of the President of the United States. And I'm just going to read a little bit of it. And if you can, let it sink in and just see if you can actually feel it and not take it cynically. Because I know sometimes I can get very cynical around this, but just to see if there's a way, especially for me, like when I think about that self of mine when I was 10 or 12 or 18 or 20, and really what would it be like to hear this? So in this proclamation, it says, during lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex, and in parentheses, LGBTQI plus month, Pride Month, we reflect on the progress we have made as a nation in the fight for justice, inclusion, and equality, while reaffirming our commitment to do more to support the LGBTQI plus rights at home and abroad. I often say that America can be defined by one word: possibilities. This month we celebrate generations of LGBTQI plus people who have fought to make the possibilities of our nation real for every American. So, when I think about this word, possibilities, there's a way that it doesn't actually feel real. I mean, it really feels like there's still a lot of places where there aren't possibilities. And yet I also know within myself, when I look back at, how constricted I felt when I was a youth, and really this feeling that there was no place on the planet for me, like that I didn't have a home, I do feel a sense of possibilities, and I can live into this place of belonging. And then in this proclamation it continues and says, today the rights of LGBTQI plus Americans are under relentless attack. Members of the LGBTQI plus community, especially people of color and trans people, continue to face discrimination and cruel, persistent efforts to undermine their human rights. And this is where I think it's so significant for us as practitioners, and those of you who are Buddhists or who have a mindfulness practice, know that we don't have to believe all that we hear. We don't have to believe all of that language that's out there against us, and we can come home to ourselves within it. At the same time, where we can recognize how painful it is, how painful it must be to the youth in Texas to go to school and just to hear all of that happening, how painful it is for the kids in Florida. And then, those teams, I don't know if you saw the team, there's a sports team that came and they had gay on their t-shirts, so then people are just showing up in that beautiful way that we do. And so I really think that it's great to reflect on this proclamation, because to me it really is an indication of how far we have come with civil rights for the LGBTQI plus community, and also this acknowledgement of that we still are in this world of samsara, of praise and blame, gain and loss, and that with our practice of mindfulness, we can meet that and support not only of ourselves but others. And then this is another, just going to read one more line from this proclamation. It says, this month we remind the LGBTQI plus community that they are loved and cherished. That we are loved and cherished. And this is a reminder that I have taken so many years to sink in, because there has been so many other messages that I am not in so many ways, or the compounded intersectional ways that identity of race or religion or economics or academics or language, all these ways that we aren't seen and we aren't cherished. And so the practice of mindfulness is a way that we can actually see each other. When we are bringing our mindfulness, we can actually begin to see each other. And so I can think of our mindfulness as actually a way that I could just bring in this sort of practice that has come in this tradition that I practice in the Theravada tradition. There's been this brought from Southeast Asia to the West, to the United States, in a way that we really have focused on meditation and on this almost kind of bare attention, where we begin to learn and see things just as they are. And it's so important in doing that because we can cut through a lot of our projections and our biases. There's also a way in that we can let go of the sacred, that we can begin to use this same sort of reasoning of this commerce and kind of just bringing things into their smallest part. So I pick something up and I can feel how it is, I can do this, but it becomes an object. And when this way that we can bring in ritual or grace or holiness, even sacredness into our practice, we can take this in to mindfulness and be like, wow, I see you. I see you. And there's a way that in seeing each other that there's such an honoring. And so just the way that we can honor each other can really bring us into this place of wholeness that we can feel so fragmented in our lives today. Many of you may know this Buddhist teacher from San Francisco, Frank Ostaseski. He's the founder of the Zen Hospice Project. And he says, "The sacred is not separate or different from all things, but rather hidden in all things. The sacred is not separate or different from all things, but rather hidden in all things." So when we shift to this way of looking at ourselves as sacred or others as sacred, we can begin to open up from this place of commodification of like, what's in it for me? What am I going to get out of this? Is this worth it? You know, who's going to be there? You know, what's the best deal? And really think about this sacredness. And I know we can have these rituals to create something sacred. Like, for example, for many people, when they start practice, they bow. And for some people, when they bow, they put their head all the way to the ground. You know, sometimes we just have a bow like this, and sometimes people put their head to the ground. And some of us aren't physically able to do that anymore, and we can infer that we're doing that. And this sense of like release and letting go and a connection, just like the Buddha on the night of the awakening, when the Buddha put their hand, you know, to the earth, touched the earth, and didn't just like, I got this, I'm gonna, you know, keep meditating, but no, like, I am here, as earth as my witness, honoring. And then the other story of the Buddha, where the Buddha, you know, was like, I don't think I can do this. No one, I'm not going to be able to teach this to anyone. You know, like this teaching is profound, but there's no way I can share it with anyone. And then the Devas came down and said to the Buddha, you know, this is really important. Might you be able to share it? Well, what would happen to the Buddha now if the Buddha went like, well, the Devas, you know, I had this vision that somebody, you know, came down and told me. You kind of look at them like they were a little bit. What if we connected with that intuitive part of ourselves, this inner knowing that might be a little beyond the rational, you know? And the Deva said, and the Buddha realized, oh, there might be people with little dust in their eyes. I love that phrase, little dust, because you know how you get like a little speck of dust, and it really, you try to get it out, and so even if you have a little dust in your eyes, you're still available. The teachings are still available. And so the Buddha responded not to a person, but to this deva, to this spiritual being, if you will, to continue teaching. And we are the beneficiary of that. We are the beneficiary of the Buddha listening to this greater wisdom that is available. And I know in some cultures, like I grew up Catholic, and my mother didn't do this, but I knew other families where, particularly the mothers in the family, would talk to the Virgin Mary. Like the Virgin Mary, they have a little statue, and the Virgin Mary was kind of like their compatriot in the world. You know, they would kind of, and other people the same way, and in other cultures as well that I'm not as, religions that I'm not as familiar with. But there can be kind of this way that we can begin to speak a different language than this rational mind when we move into this place of the sacred. Because when we are in our general world, you know, when we are at a business meeting or whatever kind of meeting, or, you know, like in other cultures we might be, oh, let's go down to the river and sit by the ocean or sit under a tree and think about it for an hour or a day or 2 weeks. But we don't generally do that anymore. If you were to have something to do and then you were like, well, I'm going to go check in with the hummingbirds, you know, that's not really going to cut it these days. But yet, there's something there. I mean, there's something there around us that we can feed into, that can feed our practice, that our mindfulness can help us in. Because sometimes what happens is we can get so narrowed into the habit patterns of getting ahead or doing what needs to be done and forget that we're actually in this bigger world. I moved to Santa Cruz recently, and I was really excited because I grew up on the East Coast near the beach, and so I've been spending a lot of time, you know, walking on the beach. And you know, when you first get to the beach, it's the waves. You know, the waves are just so amazing, and every day they're different, and you know, the tides, and so I can really feel the sense of the rhythms and being more connected with the earth. Then as I started to live there and go to the beach every day, I realized, wow, what I'm really feeling more is this sand. You know, like I'm sweeping the house at least once every day, and there's sand. I can't, you know, you get in the bed and you're like, oh, there's a grain of sand in the bed. Once again, like just these little things, a little bit of sand. And so I realized, oh, this is actually really powerful. What I'm seeing first, these ocean, the beauty is, you know, and then this thing that I'm kind of not really paying attention, but I'm bringing all over the place, is really powerful. And we know that the sand, in terms of erosion, has eroded the Grand Canyon. You know, sand is really, really powerful. And so I think about the sacred in that same way, like shifting our perspective. It's not that that we are changing something, but it's just like opening to what else might be there. And so we can take it for our breath or our mindfulness. We can bring this wider lens of how we are connected. Zenju Erkland Manuel, who many of you may know, who practiced here in San Francisco in the East Bay for quite some time and now lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico, has this quote about our practice, and she says, "We treat our lives as though they are investments. Without even realizing it, we wonder how we can make the most of our time or what we can get out of a particular experience or relationship, tethering ourselves to an unconscious viewpoint that turns our lives into never-ending projects." And I think this is so important because it's so easy to get caught up in this underlying programming, if you will, that we always are supposed to be bettering. You know, that there's supposed to be something better out there. Even as our, you know, bodies age and the eyesight, you know, I was thinking, this is supposed to be getting better. What's happening? And so when I put that lens on, literally, I think I can begin to think that, like, oh, I'm falling apart. And, I've been trying to have this frame, and it's been really hard because I've been going through a lot of challenges in my life, and I keep wondering, because I can get stuck in a place of like, oh, I'm not doing it right. Because if I were doing it right, it would be this way. It would be easy. It would be pleasant. It would be comfortable. And yet the Buddha doesn't say, and our practice doesn't say that liberation is comfort, liberation is easy, liberation is convenience. In fact, we all know, because we're still here, what it means to still be here. That there's a lot of showing up and cherishing and loving. And so that we can begin to see that this place of doing something in order to get something is really a dead end. That we don't actually know what we're going to get. We don't actually know. There's so much uncertainty. And so when we enter our lives with this idea that we're always going to be gaining something, like I'm going to do this and I'm going to gain that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to gain that, we're putting ourselves in this process that the Buddha says in the Noble Truths that's suffering, because even though it may be gaining even a spiritual practice, that can be a good thing, but then we can begin like, is it a project? Am I trying to make this one here better, a new and better improved version, and you know how they do that. They just change the color on the box and then they put the big sign on it, and then it's kind of different, but it's not the same. And so it's an invitation with the sacred to invite ourselves into the mystery. And I find this helpful, especially as I'm getting older, when, I have people that I know or family members who I know, oh my gosh, it's always going to be like this. You're just like, wow, do they really just say that again? And if we invite ourselves into this place of mystery and possibilities, then the people that we're with might not change, but we might change. I experienced this when I was home caring for my dad when he was sick with cancer, and I knew that I was really going to work my practice because, as you know, like the family of origin can be a really intense milieu. Like all the buttons, they installed them, right? So, or most of them, they know how to push them. And so I didn't know what I was going to do because I was living with my mother and my father for a few months, helping care for my dad at the end of his life. And so I just decided that I was going to have to really turn on my compassion practice, because my family can be very critical, particularly my mother. That's a whole other story, but we'll leave it at that. And so when I was there, I just did this internal action of all the things that my mom said that I was just like cringe, and I'd just be like, I can't believe you just said that. I would try to be cognizant with my practice, like, oh, this is suffering, and then just bring an internal awareness to this pain and say, oh, I care about my suffering. May I be free from suffering? Just internally, just that little pause, that sacred pause, if you will. And it was amazing how I increased my capacity to be there. And my mother didn't change, but you know what? She noticed that I changed. And later and my sisters did as well. And so it was really interesting because that was all I did. Every time I just was like, okay, I had been taught for so much of my life to ignore my suffering. Like, oh, it's not so bad. Someone else has it worse. Somebody else has it worse. And so in turning towards and actually allowing myself to have feelings, to experience the feelings, and then to care was so powerful. It was such a powerful, and it's such a mysterious practice because it shouldn't actually do anything. My mother wasn't changing, and yet I wasn't actually changing. I was just putting this internal note in. And so I really believe that this mysterious aspect of our practice is something that's really important for us to attend to. Because we think that what we know in this rational, real world is what's making the changes. And I really believe that there's other things at work. All right, so this is way out there, but I'm going to tell you because this is one of my favorite things. But Joy Harjo is the National Poet Laureate. Joy Harjo is a poet from the Muskogee tribe. Joy Harjo was the National Poet Laureate during the past administration. I won't name it, but the past one. And so I believe, I don't know this to be true, but could it be that poetry is part of the fabric of what has changed our nation? And so I want to read this eagle poem to you from Joy Harjo, just in this way of inviting in the sacred and inviting in this mystery. And this is Joy Harjo. And if you're not familiar with Joy Harjo, she has many poems. This poem is from 1990. It's Eagle Poem from Mad Love and War is the name of the book by Joy Harjo. And it's called Eagle Poem. And she uses the word pray, but I invite you to think of the word meditate, if that works better for you. To pray, you open your whole self to sky, to earth, to sun, to moon, to one whole voice that is you. And know there is more that you can't see, can't hear, can't know, except in moments, steadily growing, and in languages that aren't always sound, but other circles of motion. Like eagle that Sunday morning over Salt River, circled in blue sky, in wind, swept our hearts clean with sacred wings. We see you, see ourselves, and know we must take the utmost care and kindness in all things. Breathe in knowing we are made of all this, and breathe knowing we are truly blessed because we were born and die soon within a true circle of motion, like eagle rounding out the morning inside us. We pray that it will be done in beauty, in beauty. This is one of my absolute favorite poems. She starts off in this poem, opening ourselves up to the earth, to the sky, all that's within us and around us, and reminding us of our wholeness. And there's more, she says, there's more that you can't see, can't know, except in moments steadily growing and in languages that aren't always sound. So that this way that we're turning into our attention, we can cultivate an inner knowing that we might not be able to otherwise access when we're in this day-to-day kind of commodification of our lives. And then in the middle, she talks about the eagle, sacred wings, and just that way that the wings can kind of come through. And when you see, a hawk or something, how you can then feel like you've been touched by that sacredness. And then this line here is one of the ones that resonates for me when I'm kind of having a hard day. And she says, we must take the utmost care and kindness in all things. And I kind of try to, that line comes to me. Can I, when I'm gritting my teeth, can I take the utmost care and kindness in all things? And then this line here where she says it's almost like a Zen koan, knowing that we are truly blessed because we were born and we die soon within this true circle of motion. We only have this moment. We only have this time to offer our kindness. And then I think of the lineages of the indigenous people, and that she can end this poem by saying, We pray that will be done in beauty, knowing the violence that has been enacted on the land and on people for so long, that this belief in beauty. And so when I think about, Pride Month and proclamations and all the excitement, and I come back to this place where, there's this invitation. This month, we remind the LGBTQI plus community that they are loved and cherished, that we are loved and cherished. It's so important to me because I don't always know that, and I need other people to tell me that. I need you all. I need to be seen. I need to be loved. And I need to know that there's this possibility for beauty. There's a possibility that we can find the beauty in ourselves and each other and use our practice to support that well-being for all of us. So, going to end there. Thank you for your kind attention. I want us to have some time for comments and reflections and questions. So, please.
Hi, JD.
And I'm hard of hearing, so really gonna have to help me out. Oh, good. Yes.
So I care if I talk about? Okay. I just was tested negative. Your talk brought up all sorts of things. One of the things I just recently ran across a quote. I'm sure it must have been on Facebook, but I'm paraphrasing it. But Plato said that we know everything before we're born, and then we forget it all, and that our life is really a process of reclaiming the knowledge that we already have. So that one thing that reminded me of. And then also, you talk about sand. Have you ever seen Woman in the Dunes? It's a Japanese picture called Woman in the Dunes. She deals with a lot of sand in that. You walk out of the theater kind of like brushing the sand off. And then the last comment I wanted to make was your talk about compassion. And I got a much closer experience with, the idea of compassion. I mean, for me, my prescription in life are the Brahma Viharas, Whenever, first I kind of identify, I have like the diagnostics, like which one of the 5 hindrances, which one of the, 8 worldly winds am I being influenced by? And then once I identify it, I go, okay, which one of the Brahma Viharas is going to be the best way to... And so when I was introduced to the idea of compassion, it's being able to be with your own suffering, but also the suffering of others. And with all the mass shootings in the United States, for somehow the Uvalde one just hit me so I couldn't, it was like an intrusive thought. When I would wake up in the morning, I would think of the mornings that the parents and the loved ones of those children are waking up to each day. And so for me, it just became this exercise of like, I'm just, but how can I provide enough space for that to exist in my heart? And, just feeling so helpless too. And I don't know what the answer was, but I'm still living with that horror. Maybe this time something will change a little bit, but anyway, those are just 3 impressions that I came from.
Yeah, thank you for that. Because part of what I think is so important is that feeling in. Compassion is the quivering of the heart in response to pain, and the way that we've been taught, so many of us have been taught to wall off because the pain has been so intense. And I taught 4th grade bilingual here in California, and I just was devastated. Those are our kids, They're all our kids, and what do we do? And And it's easy to go into that place of overwhelm. And I truly believe that our practice and meeting, in addition to the practical actions that we can take that I'm not talking about today, that I know all of you are doing, I'm kind of talking about how do we live with this in our spiritual life. And there are ways, there's so many ways that we can continue to create a world that's non-harming, that, is so necessary. And how do we, maintain our humanity in this? So thank you for bringing in all that challenging, but I won't keep talking because I said enough. So, was there somebody online?
Yes, Greg has a question.
Hi there, JD. My name is Greg. Thank you so much for your talk. I want to ask you a question, but I wanted to say first, I've been a trainer off and on for several years, and your talk was just so wonderfully interwoven. And then at the end, you did what we do in training or in improv, which is you recapitulated and you tied it all together. And it was, so I really appreciate that. But my question was, you had talked about a guy and that quote about, life becomes projects and lists and things like that. And that's my life. So what was his name?
What was that?
The guy who talked about life becoming projects and...
the name, maybe you could write this, Jeff, in the Zenju, Zenju, Earthland Manuel. And she is a Zen Buddhist priest who actually practiced here at San Francisco Zen Center and now is in Santa Fe, has a number of different books. One that I really like is The Way of Tenderness. There's a nice article in Lion's Roar right now that she wrote about, her new book is about shamanism, so it's very much about this mystery and Buddhism. I haven't read it yet, but there's an article that I did read, and I think it was Tricycle of Lion's Roar, I don't remember. Thank you for that, Jeff.
Thank you. Also, what was the name of the poet?
Oh, Joy Harjo. Joy, okay. Harjo. Who's still our National Poet Laureate, which amazing.
Thank you.
Please.
First of all, thank you for your speech. I mean, you said so many things that I wanted to stop because I was thinking, there's something underneath there that I really want to... But there was a whole series of things. One of the things that I particularly appreciated that resonated when you talking about, every once in a while you heard something over and over again and then all of a sudden it really resonates with this whole thing. You talked about the commodification of our lives, and which reminded me also of our whole cultural shift to all this left brain problem solving, and if we can't problem solve it, it's which means a denial of mystery and what is sacred. And you look around at the things that are going on in the world, it defies rational explanation. And it doesn't seem that there's going to be a rational solution. But it seems to me that the solution lies in one, compassion, which needs to be awoken on a large cultural level. I think compassion is part of the sacred thing, the realization that if we stop to think about our lives and the planet, it's all really sacred. And I have 5 things that I need to do today, but each effort that I apply towards any of them, that could be a sacred thing. And that's what's going on for me. I don't really know what I've just said much. Thank you. It's meaningful for me, and it was nice for me to share.
Well, there's some Einstein quote about the mind that the mind that created the world can't be you can't solve the solution with the same mind that created it. And so that's where I see what you're the rational is guns, more, and then where do we end up? And so that's where it's partly for me, this is how do I deal with my own well-being in this samsara that we're in, that is just, the tragedies are huge. So Thank you. Yeah, just trying to believe that it's possible. What would it be like to believe that it's possible to act from that place? I'm helping Adam. So, David, then Cass.
Thank you for your talk. There are so many things that resonated for me, but the one example you gave is how you returned home and was caring for your father. My mother actually passed, and we didn't get to really see her or be with her last year. But the one thing that it's just a comment, and that is the way you said you kind of quiet your mouth, and just the impact of your mother, and the clause that you heard, or the response that you heard, that they noticed that you had changed. And what I try to include in my moving in the world is that the only thing I can change is me. And it's so great that you got that aha moment that what you're doing is on the right track, because your mom is your mom, your sister is your sister, and just thank you for that wonderful example. And the gentleman that was online who said how you tied everything together, that was pretty amazing, because it was full circle to the quote of, yeah.
Thank you. Great talk as always. I really appreciate whenever you come here and share with us. I guess I just wanted, what came to mind a couple of times as you were talking was yesterday I went to Golden Gate Park where there is a panels of the quilt are laid out there's like 4,000 panels or something. And it's really a reminder of that we only have this moment. And also it's kind of an amazing exercise in like seeing the sacred in each individual and how people try to capture that sacred, and a reminder to try to see that now while we have this moment, right? And not wait until it's a memorial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I am here in person, because that's where I'm going to go to see the names quilt. I saw it in 1986 on the Washington Mall when we had the second March on Washington for lesbian and gay rights, and I've seen it since then, but it's just always, I think when we think about the act of being seen as an act of love, that's really what one of the things I think the names quilt did, is really allowed those people, who were dying, who weren't being seen, to be seen and loved, and the compassion, mostly the compassion people, rather than just the numbers. So, yeah, thank you. Hey, you're keeping track of time, Mark.
I think we have time for one more question.
Okay.
I see Tom raised his hand.
Yeah.
Hi, JD. Thank you so much. Wow, there's so much in your talk that was wonderful. But I really love that sometimes the simplest teaching can be brought to life like you did. You talked about your mother and recognizing, oh, this is suffering. I am suffering. And you just made it so actionable, that we can pause and realize that this is what's happening. And Dave piggybacked on that and talked about how, we can only change ourselves. I have a family member who's drug addicted and living on the streets, and there's really nothing, I've come to realize there's nothing I can do to overcome that. But in my mind, I take the very worst circumstances that he has experienced over the past number of years. And in my mind, I think that's going on moment by moment all the time.
and it doesn't make allowance for things to change and improve, and for my own suffering to be reduced, or his, So anyway, thank you so much for that reminder.
Oh, thank you. And yes, it really is very painful. And I think in allowing ourselves the pain of other people's pain too, the self-compassion can really open us to that possibility. And I'm really sorry to hear about your sibling, and just really feeling into the pain of that situation and knowing how hard it is to live with that. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, JD.
Yeah.
And thank everyone for your patience. I'm a substitute teacher sort of today. So I want to ask, first of all, are there any announcements anyone has like to make? Jack?
It's put on the chat window, but I want to announce that GBM is going to have a half-day from 10 to 3 retreat on July 30th with Renee Rivera teaching, and it'll be here. Yeah, so there's information on the Google Groups, and we'll put it up on the website. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack. Is there a host today?
I have an announcement, actually. Yeah, next Saturday at Bartlett Street, SF-LGBT is having a day-long retreat with Stephen Turney and Cyrus Smith as the principal teachers, and Arena Weissman and Larry Gang will be Zooming in. You could get all the information on the website, and I did post it in the chat.
Thank you.
Yes, so there's some fruit. Most of it's organic. If you're really into that, stay away from the pineapple. And the other item is, the sweetest thing there is homemade banana something, and there are pecans in it. Okay. Oh, I'm coming around the Dharma bowl, and it's very important to focus on generosity, because when you give, you get way more back. And so just give what you can. So I'll be coming around. It's the least favorite thing I'd like to do, but I'll be coming around.
Thank you so much. And just for those of you in the Zoom world, Dharma is the Pali word for generosity. And we invite you to go to the website to make a donation. I'll leave it at that. And so before we move to our dedication of merit, I just want to read the bio for our next week's teacher, Steve Tierney. He is a professor emeritus of counseling psychology, or CHS. Stephen began his Buddhist practice in 1993, is now an ordained priest in the Soto Zen lineage Suzuki Roshi. He's a licensed psychotherapist in private practice in San Francisco, specializing in addiction and recovery, life transitions, and resilience. His therapeutic approaches are grounded in mindfulness-based, trauma-informed therapies. He is the co-founder and CEO of the San Francisco Mindfulness Foundation. Dr. Tierney is a certified suicide prevention and intervention trainer and offers community-based workshops to promote safer, healthier communities. And with that, we'll now have our dedication of merit, and JD, would you...
And then you'll ring the bell at the end, okay? After when I finish.
Ring the bell.
Okay.
So do we go gather in a circle?
Oh, great. Thank you for reminding me. So we're actually holding your Zoom hands as well, even though we're physically distant, we're all intertwined. So I'm going to take off my mask a second. Thanks. Taking a moment to honor our time together today, to remember and reflect on our intentions for freedom, for kindness, for compassion. May we offer any merit from our time to all beings everywhere. May all beings in all directions May all beings without distinction be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings know peace.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.